Okay, let's get started into the dynamic analysis portion of this course. Now here is a quick overview again of what we'll be covering in this dynamic analysis section. So in this video, we'll be covering the introduction to SSL pinning. Then we'll talk about how to install, set up, and utilize tools like Burp Suite and Proxyman that we'll be using as proxies for our Android phone. Then we'll get into the introduction to Frida and Objection. These tools are going to actually help us break SSL pinning. Then we'll go into dumping memory, sensitive data out of the Android application, talk a little bit about SQLite databases, and also show you how local storage changes at runtime of the application versus when the application is closed. Finally, we'll finish this dynamic analysis section with a live bug bounty hunt against 2 applications. So what is this thing called SSL pinning that I've been talking about for quite a while now? Well, SSL pinning is a security methodology used to ensure that application traffic is not being intercepted by a malicious party. So you may have heard of this type of attack referred to as a man-in-the-middle attack. And some mobile applications actually verify that the traffic that they're sending and receiving is coming from a known certificate. And this can actually happen in a number of ways. Some mobile applications verify based on the root certificates or the user trusted certificates of the Android phone itself. So we can actually import these certificates into the phone and trust them as a root or a user certificate. But some other mobile applications you may find actually have their own certificate trust store for the application individually. And so even though we import these certificates into the Android phone, they could still end up not being trusted by the Android application. And in some cases, this can actually cause our application to crash when we're trying to intercept the network traffic. So from a pen tester's perspective, SSL pinning can definitely make our job a little bit harder. We always want to get to the point where we're trying to see the live application traffic so that we can manipulate parameters and test for things like input validation, SQL injection, and trying to see if maybe we can see other users' accounts or editing parameters whenever possible, right? And so this is kind of a diagram overview of SSL pinning. Now, instead of on the left-hand side where it has this user, I want you to imagine that as your Android phone, as any type of mobile device. On the right-hand side where it shows the web application, just imagine this as any endpoint that our mobile phone is actually reaching out to. Could be anything like a URL or an API gateway or anything of the like where the mobile application is reaching out. Now, us as the attacker, using our tools such as Burp Suite or Proxyman, we are taking the role of this perpetrator. And we're going to be actually setting up our Android phone, right, to send traffic to ourselves as the man in the middle. Now, the mobile application that's actually running might not trust that certificate. So when it sends the data to our man in the middle, maybe it sees that certificate that's being presented by our Burp Suite or Proxyman as a malicious certificate, and so the application will actually crash there. And so to be able to successfully intercept this traffic as a perpetrator, we need to do things like breaking the SSL pinning so that our application does not crash. Now, when it comes to the proxies that we're using in this course, I prefer 2 different proxy tools. One is Burp Suite and the other is Proxyman. Now, Burp Suite is utilized by a lot of penetration testers and it has a lot of penetration testing focused tools. Things like Burp Suite Intruder, Burp Suite Repeater, everything like that will be utilized if you ever used a proxying tool like Burp Suite before. Burp Suite can be used for both iOS and Android pen testing, and in some cases when we get into the iOS portion of this course, Burp Suite will be utilized as kind of our last resort when we're intercepting our application traffic. Proxyman is a newer tool that's only been out for a few years, and it only works on Mac OS computers. But the cool thing about Proxyman is that it has some neat settings that actually allow us to import certificates into our Mac keychain, and into our emulators or our iOS devices as well. That will make the whole process of intercepting traffic a lot easier. And we'll actually be able to see like a list of all the domains or URLs that our application is reaching out to and select some of them for decryption. So if we see only certain ones that we want to be intercepting, then we can actually select specific URLs and intercept the traffic only to those URLs. So Proxyman can also be used for iOS and Android phones, but again, it's only available for Mac OS host machines. Some other options out there, if you're curious, you could use man-in-the-middle proxy, Charles proxy, Fiddler, etc. But for this course, I really had to settle on 2 tools. I don't want to give just one tool because, if you want to use a different tool or you need one for a different scenario, I always want to try to give you 2 tools. Okay, so this is what our Android interception process is going to be, and just stick with me as I walk through this slide. It will make more sense when you actually see this applied in the following videos. So the first step we're going to do is install and start our proxy software. So in some cases it'll be Burp Suite, in some cases it'll be Proxyman. I'll show you how to install both those tools. Next, we're going to configure our proxy software. So for Burp Suite, we need to specially set up some options for mobile devices, and for Proxyman, we also need to do a little bit of setup. The third step is going to be setting up the actual proxy in the emulator itself. So we'll go to the emulator settings and assign the proxy there. If we're doing this on a physical device, you can also set this up in the Wi-Fi settings. You'll have to go to advanced settings and set the proxy up from there. I will show that when we're actually doing the iOS pen testing section. When I'm using the jailbroken device, we'll actually need to go through the Wi-Fi settings. So you'll see how you can do that for iPhone there, but it's just on the settings for an Android phone if you're using a physical Android phone. Next step, to test and make sure that our proxy is actually working appropriately, we're going to intercept some clear text HTTP traffic. And this is just going to make sure that our proxy has actually applied on the Android phone. We'll be able to intercept clear text traffic. The next thing we'll need to do is actually import those certificates onto the phone, and then we need to go to the Android settings and actually trust them in the settings there so that our Android phone knows that this is a trusted certificate. So at this point on step 7, we should have the ability to intercept HTTPS traffic. And in the following videos, I'll actually show us doing this on the web browser in Google Chrome, for example. And this will actually work to intercept encrypted traffic now when we're using the web browser. But in some cases, when a mobile application is actually implementing SSL pinning appropriately, we will still fail to intercept the encrypted traffic coming from that mobile app. And so at this point, if we have not been able to intercept the traffic from our mobile application, we will need to move on to the next step, trying Objection and Frida to inject this tool into the mobile application manually or automatically, and that will help us to break SSL pinning too. Now, if we get done with all of that, there are some actual scenarios where with an Android phone, we might not be able to intercept our mobile application traffic. And as a very, very final last resort, that's when you could actually try to use the same application if they have an iOS version, and you can try to intercept the traffic using a jailbroken device. Because when we jailbreak our device, we will actually be able to use some additional tools like SSL kill chain that will kill SSL pinning at the very system level. So there are some scenarios when Android, you will not be able to break SSL pinning, but in most situations, you should be able to break it using Frida or Objection. So just keep that in mind as we're going through these videos. You might want to go and watch the iOS jailbreaking video and everything with the SSL kill chain there if it's something that you're interested in and something that you want to see for iOS as well.